My rose this week was the launch of the podcast, and what it do is an integral component of the podcast I put together, which is called AI for Founders. And basically, I saw, been thinking about podcast ideas for some time since I haven't really had my podcast back in a while. So it's kind of like, what am I going to do? I started the newsletter, which has grown up to about 17,000 subscribers around AI for Founders. I was like, okay, this is the lane that people are resonating with, so kind of a lot of times as founders, we're thinking, we get obsessed with the product and you're like, oh, I got this product. But really, if you're thinking about launching a product, you got to make sure that people want it first. And if you start with the product, you don't know. And so I've seen this time and time again where people will just like bury their head in the sand working on a product without peeking out every once in a while to see if anybody wants it. So I wanted to take the opposite tactic first, which is establish the audience and then create products to satisfy the audience. And so doing some soul searching, it's like, I love founders. I love CEOs. I love people running businesses. That's who I want to sell to. I want to create audience around that. And with the explosive success of that newsletter, I was like, okay, this is my angle. I'm going to approach, AI opportunities for founders, and that's what the podcast is going to be. So, we've backfilled a little bit of content from What It Do. I do a interview series with somebody on my staff, Fernanda, who's absolutely wonderful. And then now I'm just getting into like really what I love to do in podcasting, which are interviews. And I've got probably a half dozen interviews teed up of people that have started AI companies and just getting into the intricacies of their business, but also the mechanics of their business, and then also kind of the technology and the product itself. So I released one of those this week, super excited. And the podcast, as we did the launch, is now, it's in the top 5% of podcasts globally, which working in podcasting, that's a good number. I want to get that up to 2.5% and then work on 1% or better, as we kind of grow through it. But what it really kind of showed me as well is it reminded me of my go-to-market days in marketing of how much I love a launch, and this takes me back even further to when I was making records and was in the music business, because you don't really release a record without a launch party. You know what I mean? You got to have the launch to really set the whole thing off. And working with founders, again, for years and years and years, a lot of times that's the part they don't do. They don't launch. They just kind of like emerge into the market, and then they just start kind of working it out. And I think the biggest barrier for folks to do it is, you kind of show the warts and all when you're like brand new. You're like, here I am, and you're setting yourself up to be judged, and people do want to shy away from that kind of like ridicule for probably like evolutionary reasons. It makes sense. But the importance of having a launch is that's how you see hyper growth right in the beginning from people that are most important to you when you're starting out. And we've been talking a lot about that. Momentum. Is at the center of the bullseye when you're launching is your personal network. So launching to your personal network is very important so people can reassociate you with what you are doing right now,
Totally.
And I think as we get older, it also makes more and more sense. Like, my friends and family have been with me since Jump. I mean, they're like, what are you doing now, man? They have no idea, because I jump ship so many times on so many different things that they can't keep it straight. So if I send them a text, I'm like, hey, I've got a new podcast called AI for Founders. Will you please rate and review this podcast for me? They're like, sure. So you're like reassociating yourself in their brain of like, this is what Ryan's doing. This is Ryan's associated with. And then you have the opportunity to kind of springboard off that. So for podcasters in particular, this launch strategy or relaunch strategy is super important, because you really don't need that big of a lift to make a big mark in the algorithm, So basically my launch strategy is like, okay, I'm going to put it out on my channels, of course, let people know what's up. But also I just take the time to go through my phone for about an hour, texting all the people that I know that are actually my people, like, hey, please rate and review, subscribe to this show. And you get an overwhelming response from that if you're lucky. And I'm very grateful to all my people for doing that for me. And I think not only does it set the product up, I think for a great launch, but when you're able to do that to your closest friends and family, it reassociates in their mind with, okay, here's what Ryan's working on right now. So you can kind of expand upon that to hopefully find that roofer in Florida that somebody knows who wants to make that connection, So podcast launched at top 5%. Big shout out to Jason Katz for being a part of that as well. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, man. Great stuff, dude. I'm super happy for you. And I'm watching the newsletter and I'm watching what's coming through and I'm like, this is good stuff. Like, this feels really polished, and I'm really happy for you and I'm happy to see it. And I'm stoked that we're sharing these success stories. And this is just the beginning. I think that we're bringing a lot of abundance into our lives, and that mindset is going to pay off.
Agreed, my friend. Agreed. I'm a wild bunny, bro. Amazing. Okay. I've got a buffalo to share. So I think last week, one of my objectives was to like really get into this vibe coding,
I remember that.
Because it was named that really encouraged me to actually do it. So I tried out two companies. I tried out Lovable and I tried out Bolt, and I made the same app with both, basically to say, okay, if I'm going to pay a subscription, I think it's like $50 a month or something, I'm going to do it with one of these tools. And they're both kind of the same thing, where you're prompting, and then from those prompts on the other side of the screen, it's coding, So I began with an app on both of them, which was, I want to create an app for video calls that assesses my posture and sends a little alert if I'm slouching, or slumping over. So basically, that's the first prompt. Boom, 2 minutes, done. All you have to do is okay the camera, and then it has a picture of you and it says like straighten your shoulders when you're slouching, and it works. Not only that, but it immediately had like reports that it thought would be germane. So it'd be like, okay, time watched on the video, percentage of time that you have good posture, medium posture, or poor posture. So it had all these kind of analytics, and I did it with both of them. So with Lovable, right out of the gate, it was really cool. With Bolt, it broke itself, and it said, there was a button that said try to fix. So I'm just like, yeah, all right. Hit the button. It had to hit the button twice, but it fixed itself. And then it had basically a competitive app. So both of those apps, from idea to deployment, 2 minutes. Both were functional.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So
makes me
think
like, what I should make. I could use something that helps me with filler words, because I use filler words a lot.
That's a great idea. So I was like, okay, based on this, just gut feeling, I need to make a decision. I'm going with Lovable. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to spend an hour here and see if I can build something that would be helpful for me with Lovable. So the second app I made was like, okay, I want you to, in real time, transcribe what I'm doing on these video calls. So on a podcast like this, and I want you to give me recommendations for tools, websites, and podcasts based on the content of the conversation. I want you to refresh it every 10 seconds and put it in a list underneath the video. Boom, 2 minutes, builds the list. And I'm like, oh, okay. Actually, what I also want you to be able to do is I want to be able to bookmark certain lists, pull it over to another list, and never repopulate that link into the bottom again. Or if I can X out of a particular link, so I never see that particular link again. And it just will refresh consistently. Boom, 30 minutes, built it.
Amazing.
Super cool, man. And actually, so fun. And I get why they call it vibe coding, because it's just the vibe. And like being able to deploy it and see the prototype in real time, all of the intuitive features that you want for it just kind of grow organically. You're like, oh yeah, okay, this would be cool, but what if it emailed me this notification, or what if it did this? And so you're just starting to like kind of, bolt on to your software and build it up. So, Lovable,
I could see myself on this.
Dude, I think you would really like it, man. Like we were talking about last week, it's just like, what are little problems? Like, I don't want to recreate Salesforce, but it's like, what's one little thing that would actually be helpful for me, in any given situation,
Awesome. I love it.
So that was a good one. The only other recommendation I wanted to make too, I haven't tried it yet, but I got a recommendation from my buddy Dave that, I had a call with 4 coders, and they're all like, dude, we're using Lovable and Bolt in our in our tools. We're like putting it in there, he's like, but if you have a chance, you should run it through this other tool just to make sure to check the cleanliness and like the quality of it, which is called Code Rabbit, which is another AI tool, which basically just cleans up the code coming out of Lovable. So, I'm going to keep this. This is now on my most important things daily, for an hour a day, I'm going to spend on Lovable just vibe coding and seeing what I can kind of come up with and what will be interesting, and see if it can develop kind of some cool products out of that.
Right on. You're the product man and the rabbit man.
The bunny rabbit guy. Your business, all on shows where your ideal customers are already listening. Kitcaster connects founders and entrepreneurs, professionals, with podcasts that actually make sense for their brand. No pitching, no guessing. You just have great conversations on great shows. And the best part, Kitcaster handles everything. You just show up and bring your A game, Kitcaster does the rest. This is hands down one of the easiest ways to grow your personal brand and just create a wellspring of content. For short video, for blog posts, for speaking engagements, for whatever. So if you've been thinking, yeah, I really need to step up my content game, go to kitcaster.com and apply today. Now back to the show.